Sawadee Krap. Welcome to Break Time with Monte. Today's story, Nelson Mandela passes at age 95. Nelson Mandela died at his home of complications from a lung infection. Within minutes, news agencies around the world were running tributes to the great man. We'll read one of them. Within minutes of the announcement of Nelson Mandela's death, news agencies were running long stories on his life. This is, of course, because obituaries of famous people are often written well in advance of their deaths. Here is an excerpt from the AFP news agency's Mandela obituary, published the morning of his death. Nelson Mandela dies aged 95. Johannesburg. Nelson Mandela, the revered icon of the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, and one of the towering political figures of the 20th century, has died at the age of 95. Mandela, who was elected South Africa's first black president after spending nearly 3 decades in prison, has been receiving treatment for a lung infection at his Johannesburg home since September, after 3 months in the hospital in a critical state. His condition deteriorated, and he died following complications from the lung infection with his family by his side. Mandela, once a boxer, had a long history of lung problems after contracting tuberculosis while in jail on Robben Island. The news was announced by a clearly emotional South African president, Jacob Zuma, live on television, who said Mandela had departed and was at peace. Our nation has lost a great son, said Zuma. What made Nelson Mandela great was precisely what made him human, he said. A photo taken in 1961 shows South African anti-apartheid leader and African National Congress ANC member Nelson Mandela. His extraordinary life story, quirky sense of humor, and lack of bitterness towards his former oppressors ensured global appeal for the charismatic leader. Once considered a terrorist by the United States and Britain for his support of violence against the apartheid regime, at the time of his death, he was an almost unimpeachable moral icon. The Nobel Peace Prize winner spent 27 years behind bars before being freed in 1990 to lead the African National Congress in negotiations with the white minority rulers, which culminated in the first multiracial elections in 1994. A victorious Mandela served a single term as president before taking up his new role as a roving elder statesman and leading AIDS campaigner before finally retiring from public life in 2004. When he emerged from prison, people discovered that he was all the things they had hoped for and more. Fellow Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said, "He is by far the most admired and revered statesperson in the world and one of the greatest human beings to walk this earth. He was a global cause célèbre during the long apartheid years, and popular pressure led world leaders to tighten sanctions imposed on South Africa's racist white minority regime. In 1988, at a concert in Wembley Stadium in London, tens of thousands sang "Free Nelson Mandela" as millions more watched on their television sets around the world. Now, today's vocabulary. Admire, admire. Apartheid, apartheid. Appeal, appeal. Archbishop, archbishop. Behind bars, behind bars. Bitterness, bitterness. Campaigner, campaigner. Cause célèbre, cause célèbre. Century, century. Charismatic, charismatic. Complications, complications. Condition, condition. Critical, critical. Contract a disease, contract a disease. Culminate, culminate. Decade, decade. Depart, depart. Deteriorated, deteriorated. Elder, elder. Emerge, emerge. Emotional, emotional. Ensure, ensure. Excerpt, excerpt. Extraordinary, extraordinary. Fellow, fellow. Figure, figure. Fist, fist. Fund, fund. Global, global. Icon, icon. Impose, impose. In advance, in advance. Infection, infection. Jail, jail. Lack of, lack of. Laureate, laureate. Lung, lung. Minority, minority. Moral, moral. Multiracial, multiracial. Negotiations, negotiations. News agency, news agency. Obituary, obituary. Oppressor, oppressor. Precisely, precisely. Pressure, pressure. Publish, publish. Quirky, quirky. Racist, racist. Regime, regime. release, release, retire, retire, revered, revered, roll, roll, roving, roving, salute, salute, sanction, sanction, sense of humor, sense of humor, state, state, statesman, statesman, statesperson, statesperson, struggle, struggle, term, term, terrorist, terrorist, towering, towering, treatment, treatment, tuberculosis, tuberculosis, unimpeachable, unimpeachable, victorious, victorious, violence, violence. That's today's story and vocabulary. Hey, have a great day. I'll see you next time on Break Time with Monte.